One of the big abdications of power and leadership I see is people refusing to acknowledge that they are gatekeepers, that part of their job is to maintain safety for the people that they're responsible for. During COVID, I started a virtual sex organization. What was it called? Virtual erotic adventures, right? So like everybody on their computer on Zoom doing sexy things. And it was beautiful. And beginning it, I started with this philosophy that I'd kind of really inherited, which is one of inclusivity. Everybody's welcome is what I thought inclusivity meant. And then, of course, it was pointed out to me by people who loved me and who came from much more marginalized identities and backgrounds than I did. A Black woman who didn't grow up with money was a dear friend, my best friend. She was like, okay, like Mischa, when you hear inclusivity, you hear something beautiful. When I hear inclusivity, I hear that you as a white man are going to let in all the other white people who are going to hurt me. You're going to let in racists. You're going to let in sexists. You're going to let in people who are going to body shame me. When you say inclusivity, I hear not safe for me.
Is it possible to grow in power while growing other people's power as well? Or is it this kind of like binary thing where we end up like, well, if I'm getting powerful, somebody's getting less powerful, and therefore I'm making somebody less secure while I become more secure? Or is there a way to elevate everybody together?
Of course. So many ways. So many ways. There's so many, just think of the leaders that you most admire and the ways that they leveraged their leadership to be empowering. From making a lot of money and instead of just like giving away, to charity, like actually investing in people around you, in their careers, in their life dreams, really like taking financial wealth and spreading it in a way that's like actively empowering and not just reinforcing of the existing systems, right? So the difference between targeted anonymous gifting and naming a wing of some atria or whatever, some opera after yourself, or like using charity to self-aggrandize and not actually challenging systems. In community, community leaders can be, right? You can be the one who dominates the conversation and makes all the decisions unilaterally, or you can use the fact of your leadership to proactively say, hey, person who never talks, what is your thought? Or hey, like what would it look like to empower you? I really tend to gravitate towards leaders who I can see are using the opportunity of their leadership to practice and hone and get better at all the skills that power tends to diminish, like attunement, like listening, like platforming others, especially people with maybe more marginalized, or people like, and being smart about it too. One of the big abdications of power and leadership I see is people refusing to acknowledge that they are gatekeepers, that part of their job is to maintain safety for the people that they're responsible for. A great example, I used to run during COVID, I started a virtual sex organization. It was, what was it called? Virtual erotic adventures, right? So like everybody on their computer on Zoom doing like sexy things. And it was beautiful. And beginning it, I started with this philosophy that I'd kind of really inherited, which is one of inclusivity, right? Which is inclusivity.
Sure.
Everybody's welcome is what I thought inclusivity meant. And then, of course, it was pointed out to me by people who loved me and who came from much more marginalized identities and backgrounds than I did, that when you a Black woman who didn't grow up with money was a dear friend, my best friend. And she was like, okay, like Mischa, when you hear inclusivity, you hear something beautiful. When I hear inclusivity, I hear that you as a white man are going to let in all the other white people who are going to hurt me. Like you're going to let in racists, you're going to let in sexists, you're going to let in people who are going to body shame me, right? When you say inclusivity, I hear not safe for me, right? Everybody's welcome. Oh, I guess that means that like the people who are going to like make my life harder are welcome. I don't hear that you're protecting me.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm hesitant to join your organization because right? Like you're like a big open tent. Everybody's welcome. That's not
Right.
actually safe. Right? Woof! Right? What a beautiful awakening that she offered in that moment to like my responsibilities. What I thought that I was doing with power was being magnanimous and generous and saying open to all. And really what she was calling me into was like, no, you actually have to make hard decisions.
Yeah.
Part of wielding power well is to really actually put a stake in the ground for, are you going to be exclusive based on looks and wealth? Or are you going to be, and thinness? Or are you going to be exclusive based on values? Are you going to be exclusive based on vibe? Are you going to be exclusive based on, people aligning with political positions? And to what degree? Like, oh, what an awakening to the responsibilities that I held in that moment.
How did you navigate that? Because I think you mentioned this regarding, like, I can't remember what the group was, but it had something to do with like the Folsom Fair and like Nazis. And there was like this like Nazi pig thing that you were talking about in another podcast. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
So, yeah, I love this example. My supervisor and mentor is the executive director of the Folsom Street Fair, which is the largest leather and kink event in the world. And they told me a story that I now repeat, which is at some point this group called, I can't remember, something like Nazi Death Pigs, which were a group of people who really enjoyed this kind of particular like Nazi kink. This was their kind of kink that they wanted to play, and they wanted to have a booth and an exhibit and demonstrations at Folsom Street Fair, and they applied for a place. So this was not a terrorist organization. This is just people with a very, very, very specific kink.
Yeah.
And there were protests on about their application from various other community members, and I might not be telling the story right because this is not my story, but the upshot is that there was pressure, like, of course we shouldn't allow these people. And then there was a lot of people who were like, of course you should. Like, this is one of the only places in the world where these, right? Like, we don't want to start censoring. We don't want to start, like, limiting. And the conclusion that they came to, and I don't think this is like a blanket best practice around inclusivity practices, but the philosophy behind it is, which is the conclusion that they came to was to not allow this group to be there, but not because they were judging their kink, but because of their own capacity as an organization. And I do advise this to other organizational leads, right, or gatekeepers, right? The question is not, do you believe that who this challenging person is okay? The question is not about judging them. The question is, do you have the skills to stay in your integrity as a space holder and hold them well? Keep them safe, keep other people safe. Is their presence going to compromise your commitment to safety for the rest of the group, etc.? And what they realized was they're like, you know what? We are the best in the world at what we do, but even we don't actually have the skills to commit to being able to hold safe space according to our standards with this group in our space.
Right. And so what I hear in that, right, is it goes from about being about the other or the person or the judgment of other people and who they are, but really looking back at like more my capacity and like what do I actually have the capacity for in a particular situation, whether I'm holding a play party space or I'm holding a conversation between friends or whether I'm whatever it is that I'm doing. It's like, do I have the capacity? I'm looking more internally and tuning into that more rather than looking externally about whether this is good or bad or not.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's such an elegant reminder of a practice that all of us can adopt, even in our interpersonal conversations, of tuning to our own capacity. Like, am I able to be as present as it's important to me to be? Right, and this is an important distinction. It's not right. Like if someone's having a conversation and it's draining to me, right? Of course, my instinct is to be like, oh, this person is such a drain. God, what a drain. Like, oh, just get away. God, like what a burden they are on me. Right? And the reframe is, I'm not able to be present in this conversation in the way that it's important to me to be present. Like it's important to, like, right? So I'm returning the focus of the challenge to my capacity and also to my values. Right? It's important to me to be present. It's important to me not to be in situations where I find myself cultivating resentment. Right? A good example, my dad's got dementia and my mom wants me around all the time. Right?
Yeah.
They live relatively close to me, and I've increased the frequency of my visits to roughly once a week at this point, but like I am really tuning in to my capacity and like to where I'm cultivating resentment, to where I'm cultivating frustration, to where where like those dynamics are existing in me. And I'm not saying that like the second there's any discomfort, I have a right to like not help
Right,
my
right,
mom
right,
take
right.
care of my dad. Of course not. But I'm paying attention to my capacity and to how it's affecting me.
Right.
And I might at some point like draw some limits or boundaries or manage my time in such a way that I can stay a joyful man, that I can stay a joyful person,
Mm-hmm.
that I can fill my own cup and be resourced. It's so tempting to just give and give of ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
or to just put up any boundaries when we experience discomfort. And instead, I try to do my best to attune to my capacity. And ooh, wow, like it's really important to me to show up well, and I just know I'm going to show up badly right now.
Yeah.